When you're going to buy the property, you got to get very flexible on the kind of debt you're going to get, because once you own it, you have control. You don't have a noose around your neck that you got to close. These kids wind up with drug problems. They wind up in prison. I mean, other than one or two of them, they really screwed up their lives. The first key to posting and doing things is what I was always taught from these guys is consistency. You can't do it on Monday, following Thursday, then take 3 weeks up. Nobody's going to follow that. If the money keeps compounding and you keep paying these things off and it goes from, well, it nets $1,500, now it nets $1,700.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Commercial Real Estate Blueprint Podcast. I'm super excited for today's guest. We have Todd Napola. He does pretty much everything in commercial real estate. He's got management, he's got his own portfolio, he's an author, and he puts out incredible content, lots of value. So we're really excited for you to be here. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So for people who don't really know much about you, give us a little backstory on yourself and how you got into real estate.
All right. My name is Todd Napola. We're based down here in South Florida, Hollywood, Florida. And we have a commercial real estate management company. We lease properties. We redevelop properties. We don't develop anything ground up. It's mostly rehabs and facelifts, so to speak. And our portfolio is only in the state of Florida. We love our state. We stick to our state. That's what we know best. And that's kind of our edge. So we like to have the philosophy that I could drive to my properties and be home for dinner in the same day. So that's how we do our property management. I got started buying properties quite on accident. I was 25 years old. I was a stockbroker. It was the 1990s. The market was great. And I made some pretty good money. And I wanted to make money without going to work every day. Yeah. So now it's popular to call it cash flow, but back then it was mailbox money. So I bought a commercial property, a warehouse in 1998, and it had 7 tenants. When I bought it, there was 3 vacancies. The whole world told me I was an idiot. Everybody told me this is the biggest mistake of your life. And they told me I don't know what I'm doing. And I bought the property, and the rest is history. I've loved it for 27 more years.
That's awesome. So you basically immediately got introduced into value add commercial real estate, which is like the best thing you can get into off the rip. I'm curious, did you buy that up in New York or was it here in Florida?
Down here in South Florida.
Okay, cool. And you were living in New York?
No, I was living down here.
Oh, you're living here?
I moved to South Florida as a teenager. My parents said we were moving when I was in high school. I couldn't be more excited. Moved right down here and been here now for 35 years.
That's awesome. That's so cool. So how did you find that first deal? Was it like just something you came across, or did you target industrial? Or?
Well, now I'm going to show my age. This was the days before the internet. So back then when you wanted to buy a property, you actually drove around to look for a property, or you read in the newspaper. There were ads in the paper. So that particular property, there was a for sale sign, and this was 1998. And in 1998, the market was really bad because that was after the whole savings and loan crisis, and nobody wanted to buy real estate. So this particular property was owned by a bank in Canada by the name of Gentra, and Gentra foreclosed on it for a $1.2 million mortgage, and they had it for sale for $600,000. So they were offering me debt if I bought it, and at first it was with 25 to 35 to 40% down. In the end, it came out around 35%. But I said, it seems like a good deal. I had the money, but I was so inexperienced and I didn't have any business plan or any of this, even like value add wasn't even a word. I just figured if I buy it and I fill it and I collect the rent should be more than the bills. So that's what I did. And I went and bought the property. And I always tell people I literally went and applied for 3 credit cards because I wasn't sure I'd have enough money to close. But I drained my bank account to $50. Luckily, I didn't need the credit cards. At the real estate closing, even the lawyer who was doing the closing, who was probably my age now, who was like senior to me when I was 25 buying a property, told me this is not how real estate works. You're in for a rude awakening. But everybody was wrong. I bought the property in June. I released the tenants because of the foreclosure. The 4 tenants there had to get new leases. They all signed new leases. I got 3 new tenants. And in October, I went and applied for financing. And in December, the building I purchased for $575, I took out a loan for $600,000. I had all my money back in my hand. I had a loan for $600,000. The property was cash flowing about $5,000 a month. And I was hooked. And I started buying property after property after property.
That's insane.
So your first deal was like your one deal that changed your life forever, kind of.
100%. It let me believe that, one, the information most people give you is wrong. And it's not necessarily wrong because they're trying to hurt you. They don't understand it. They're fearful of it. And they don't believe things work that way. And it also taught me a lesson that you really got to shoot your shot. I mean, I was lucky. I was 25. I was a single guy. I had a good job. So if I lost all my money, I knew I was going to regroup, but I just didn't see how that was going to happen. But I think the real reason I bought the property is I didn't get so technical like a lot of people do today. They want to put a business plan together. They want to run financial models. They want to, they want to bring it to 16 people. I just bought it and figured I'd figure it out.
Yeah. That's kind of exactly the approach we've taken. We've not like we've done anything to your level, but we're working on trying to build our portfolio. And we bought a few deals, and we did it since we started the podcast. People were like, how are you buying these deals? Like, we just found them and just went after it and did it. Like, there's so, like you, to your point, there's just so many people out there who, they look at deals all day long. They talk about deals. They talk about how they're going to get into real estate. and then they just never really take any action on it. And like you're saying, like confidence comes from taking action.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's so cool. So from there, what happened? You said you kept buying. So when you were buying in the early stages, were you doing most of these buildings by yourself, or were you raising money at any point? Or
at that point, it was my money, and I was doing it on my own, and I started buying building after building. And keep in mind, I was a stockbroker, and this was the 1990s when the dot-com bubble was building up, and you could have made a fortune in stock, but all the young guys I was working around, they were still telling me, why would you buy a property? I remember the second property I purchased was even cheaper. It was $475. Seller financing, I put $100,000 down, and I was telling my friends, this is going to be great. I'm going to get like $600 to $700 a month. And they're like, with $100,000 in the stock market, you make like 10 grand a month. But I said, no, this is better. And and I still own both of those properties. I still own most of the properties I bought. Oh, wow. But you got to have the patience and let it grow slow. And you got to be willing to take $100 grand and hope to get $6,000-$7,000 a year out of it in the beginning.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
And you got creative financing too, so you didn't have to worry about like trying to get approved for a loan or anything like that. You can just, if the seller's willing to lend you the money, and they're willing to carry the note, just get that property. That's a great deal. Yeah.
I tell people a lot of time, when you're going to buy the property, you got to get very flexible on the kind of debt you're going to get, because once you own it, you have control. You don't have a noose around your neck that you got to close. Mm-hmm. So once you own it, you could refi. And many deals I go into, I'll take whatever kind of debt I got to get that I'm comfortable I could close, because if you miss the closing, you're going to lose your deposit. Mm-hmm. So I just want to close. I'm happy to take debt, whichever way it is, to get it under my possession. Once I own it and I could breathe, then I'll get creative and go get new debt.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. I'm curious. We're doing it. So the deal we're buying now, it's $450. It's a warehouse. It's 10,000 feet in North Carolina, and we're doing 75% seller financing. The other portion we're getting in the form of hard money loan. Have you ever done anything like that, where you used hard money and done like 100% financing? Or
I've done both separately. I have never done hard equity loans to 100%, but I've used hard equity when I've had some great opportunities. Mm-hmm. And there was a gentleman selling a portfolio of properties, and they were all pretty inexpensive. But he's like, I'll sell you this deal, but I need to close in a couple of weeks. And I didn't have all the cash, so I did do a hard equity loan. I think it was 60% I borrowed, and I think I paid back then, it was like 10%. I think now it's around 12, 13%. But again, was happy to go in just to get possession of the properties. I knew no lender would close fast enough. I wasn't about to start selling everything I owned or refinancing, so it works. But I will tell you, I have bought a property with 100% financing. I'm a big reader. That's why I wrote a book. And everybody was talking back then, and this was like early 2000s, about how they buy properties with no money down. And I was like everybody else, skeptical. I said, bullshit, you can't do that. Let me get a book to prove that you can't do that. And the book basically said, here's the formula. And I was like, I read a whole book for this, get a loan and get a second position from a seller. So I said, okay. So I'll try it. And I went to the first person I went to, the very first person. They were selling a property, it fit the criteria of what they told me to look for. Mm-hmm. And I said, you want $1 million for your property. I give you the $1 million. I said, but you got to hold back $250,000 for 2 years. And they said, okay. I was like, and I literally went to the closing and I bought a $1 million property, and I got a check because, you get the closing costs back. You get the security deposits, the tax abatements. And I said, I actually got a check to buy a property. And it was such a great idea. That was 20 something years ago. I never did it again.
Why is that?
I don't know, because I'm dumb like other It worked.
I think that's a good point, though, because we forget about that. And we have to remind ourselves, like even on the plane here, Graham's like, we really just need 25%. We haven't exactly figured out the code of how, working that with the bank, but I know it's possible. People do it all the time in residential. Don't hear about it so much in commercial, but I know it's possible. Yeah. And we forget about it.
Yeah. And for the people listening too, like the key there is I assume the seller was in second position.
Yes.
To the bank. And the bank's in first position. So the bank has to be comfortable with it. The seller has to be comfortable with it. But it's crazy that the bank was, because we spoke to our lender. We have a couple, but he was like, yeah, you can do it. But you have to get the seller to sign something basically that was saying
they couldn't foreclose, right?
No, not that they couldn't foreclose. Basically, like if we got into trouble, like we didn't have to pay them back, like immediately, right. Or like over monthly payments. I was like, man, that's gonna be a hard sale. So I guess we just got to find a bank that will do like what you said.
There's many ways to get creative, but it just shows that even myself, who's done this now for nearly 30 years, a model works, but you don't take advantage of all of them. Yeah. There's just so many different ways to skin the cat and get the property, and you find them. I always find the path of least resistance, like you said, that does require more work, but you could get those deals done still.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great, because we've just been trying to figure out basically how do we keep as much equity, not to be greedy. We just don't want, like, a lot of people, like, they go out and raise a bunch of money from a bazillion different people. They build a massive portfolio with nothing wrong with that at all. But then you built yourself what I see is like another job, unless you put managers in place and stuff. But that's not as much what we're after. We're after more of like a nice, like a good quality, smaller portfolio that we own the majority of, with, if we have friends and family partners in it and stuff like that. So we've just been trying to figure that out, something we've been wrestling through, because we keep finding opportunities. It's just, which is, we're fortunate to do that. But
So I guess with that, for people that are they're like us, that maybe they're brokers or they're just trying to get that financial independence number. They want to get that 5,000 cash flow on your first deal. What debt structure or deal structure would you recommend for somebody that's trying to buy their first deal to get them on that financial independence number?
Well, the first trick to that, and I tell this people all the time, is what is the number? And don't tell me a number that has you, living in, St. Martin all year long and flying around on private jets. Tell me your minimum number.
Yeah.
Like, what does it take? Is it really like, I know you want a $10,000 a month condo, but would a $2,000 suffice? I know you want a Rolls Royce, but will a Honda? So what do you need?
Yeah.
And let's say nowadays, today, maybe that number is you need $5,000. So the first thing is to figure out what you need to get to that number, because once you know in the back of your mind you got it, you're still hungry. You're not satisfied,
right?
But you got it. So on Monday when your friend says, "Oh, I got to go to work," you don't actually have to. And once your mindset changes and it's the truth, your whole game changes, because now you don't have to do anything. And now when you come across clients, you don't have to work for anybody. Now you need to because you're not comfortable with that amount of money, but things are going to be okay.
Yeah.
The reason real estate's great is because it'll do that trick for you, but it's going to take time. And I say the biggest threshold for people to get over when they're buying properties is that it's not year 1 and 2 that you're going to make any money. Those are the years you're going to give everything back to the property. But people feel like, well, if I put $100,000 into this property, I want money, or I might as well just buy a treasury bond. You're going to get very little. It's year 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10 that come in. The first property I bought for $575, the gross income on that property each year is well over $575 now. But it was nowhere near that when I bought it. So it takes time to mature. So the sooner you get started in the game, the better. So if you could get started in your 20s, you're golden. But you could get started in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s. There's still time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great mentality. It's like basically just, it's never too late.
Yeah.
It's never too late. That's a great point too. We've the couple buildings we bought. Yeah, we're kind of in the stabilization mode right now. We've got them leased, thankfully, but I know we're gonna have to put some capex into them, and then it'll be exciting to see year 4 or 5 start to see some cash flow coming in. That's awesome. Sure. Question for you now. So, what does your portfolio look like now?
So when I first bought property, the first one was an industrial property. It was actually mostly automotive related. It had like an oil change place, an auto glass guy, a couple of mechanics, things of that nature. And at that time in the 1990s, buying warehouse was easy. So I was buying a lot of warehouses, car lots, storage lots, things like that, because they were easy to buy. They were inexpensive, all sub $1 million. So I bought a lot of that. Then this little company came around called Amazon, and nobody wanted to buy retail, but they all wanted warehouse. So very quickly it pivoted that I wasn't able to buy warehouse. And I was even saying, I went like a 24-month span where I bought 700,000 feet of retail space, and I bought 11,000 square feet of industrial. You just couldn't get it. It made no sense. Wow. So you were able to buy a lot of retail. Now it's starting to swing up again that maybe there's a little bit too much warehouse out there. I still think it's a great asset class, but retail is not going to die. You're not going to go online for everything. People are still very social beings. We want to go to restaurants. We got to go get our hair cut, so the strip centers, the kind of things that I buy are going to be okay. The power centers, they're a little bit different with the big box. I stay away from them because the footprint of needing, the old days of like even a grocery store needing 70,000 feet, that's over. But the strip centers will be okay. So that's how I wound up in mostly retail.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've heard that sentiment from a lot of people. And too, the firm we work for, when we first started there, they were buying small bay industrial, small units. So it's easier to fill with, there's a bazillion tenants who will take 1 to 3 to 4,000 feet. And then also neighborhood retail is what they were calling it. But strip centers, like you said, without big box. Yep. Like the pizza restaurant, the nail salon, the Chinese takeout place, like that type of thing that it's not going to get replaced by Amazon. So for people who want to get into the game, do you have an asset class you recommend them start in, or is it just kind of whatever you can get your hands on?
I recommend you follow the path of what you'd ultimately like to do. So if you told me I want to be the biggest owner of multifamily, try to get into multifamily. If you want to get into warehouse, get into warehouse. So you're not going to start with 50,000 feet. Start with 2,000 feet. But get into the class you want to get into. However, if you can't, multifamily by far is the easiest to get started. So get started, then pivot. But if you could start with the class you like, I would suggest it. But yeah, truthfully, by any means necessary, get in the game. It's so much easier to make it simple. It's always easier to get a new job when you have a job than when you're unemployed. So it's easier to move from one asset class to the other once you have a track record. But you got to get started.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point.
It's a great point, because we're sitting in a room right now. It's probably about 500, like 200 square feet, maybe 100 square foot. And we got 4 interns like over here in the corner. These guys are over here. They're young. They're taking action. I was like that like a year and a half ago. I was an intern coming out of the military and didn't know anything. The first thing about commercial real estate, what a cap rate was. And I just wanted to jump in and learn because I didn't know what asset class I even wanted to choose. So I bought these guys, and these guys are going to do great hanging around YouTube. But I think if you're listening to this and, you have no idea what you're going to do, just jump in somewhere and find a mentor or two. Which brings me, what mentors or people have you looked at, as you've grown in commercial real estate over the 30 plus years?
That's a long answer, but I'm going to try and make it as short as I can. Mentorship is everything. And truthfully, like we have interns, we actually have, I think, 13, 14 interns this summer. Wow. And it's so inspiring to see these young guys and girls want to be into real estate or learn business. It's incredible. So you have to have that. But part of the trick that people don't understand about mentorship is everything today is available to you online and by books. So a lot of the people who I would say mentored me the most never met me. And a lot of them are not alive. They're books I've read, and I've read the story of guys like Trammell Crow and guys like, even like, he's still alive, but like Larry Silverstein from New York. These guys, you read their story and then you relate it to yourself. So I put myself as a character in their story and say, oh, that happens to me. And then when it does happen, I say, well, I know what Larry Silverstein did. So you get mentorship from YouTube. You get it from podcasts, you get it from books, you get it from Instagram, TikTok, whatever you want to go. But it is important to try and find a real person. So my mentor now, who's been my mentor for years, is a gentleman named Gary Rappaport. He does exactly what I do. He's substantially larger. He's a wonderful guy. He's a past president of the ICSC, but he does what I do. He has a management company, a leasing company. He doesn't build anything. He just rebuilds. So it's the same model, and he's a fantastic guy. He gives me a lot of time. I fly up to Virginia and see him every year. I see him at the conventions. I was just with him a few weeks ago. So I'm close with him, but I don't make decisions. I don't say, well, gee, I need to call Gary. But many, many times in a day, I could sit there and say, what would Gary do?
Yeah.
And this is a gentleman with, I think, about $8 to $10 billion worth of real estate in his portfolio. And he's a monster. And he wrote books too, by the way, and fantastic books.
That name sounds super familiar.
He's a mogul. It's Rappaport Real Estate from, Virginia and Washington, D.C. area. But he's like me as well. All his properties are close. All his properties are similar. And he never sells. The first property he bought, he still owns as well. So when you find someone like that, I don't need to bother him all the time, but he becomes more of a role model to me than he knows. And you know what? I'm 52. I think Gary's 75 years old. I see him. I'm still a fan. And I tell him that I'm still fanning on you. It's real estate. It doesn't mean I want to be like him in all areas. I just want to follow his real estate career. So it's been done before. So because I know it's been done and he's doing it, I'm just trying to get there, and I'm racing the race and following his lead.
That's so cool. I think we talk a lot about on our podcast, because when we interview guests, they always bring this up. It's like the people you surround yourself with is just so key.
Oh, yeah.
And if you can get mentors and somebody like that who can just show you, like you said, show you how to do things where you're not necessarily bugging them all the time, but you could just watch what they're doing and learn from them. Even if they just give access to you, like just to watch them, do a deal. You learn so much just by being there. But you mentioned something a minute ago, very casually. You said, "Oh, I just bought 700,000 square feet of retail." That's insane. Like that's not normal. So like, how were you able to do that? Did you go out and start raising money for that, or are you still just rolling, kind of, putting stuff together?
A little bit of both. So a little both. So on some deals I raise capital, on some deals I do them myself. But that wasn't 700,000 like quickly. That was over like 2.5 year time span. But in that time span, we're buying larger centers now.
Yeah.
So the truth is, when I got started, I was buying anything. I still love deals. I'm probably still a little bit of a deal junkie when it's properties I like. So I still would buy a 3,000 square foot deal because I have the management team. It's not the right thing to do. But yeah, now the centers I'm buying, they're all over 100,000 square feet. We're in contract to buy one now. It's 166,000 feet. So it doesn't take a lot of closings before you hit those kind of numbers.
That's awesome. So of your portfolio now, how much more is it than the 700,000 square feet? And is it spread all across Florida? Is it mostly around this area? Or?
It's mostly very South Florida, Broward County, Palm Beach County, Port St. Lucie County.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. That's impressive.
Yeah.
That's really impressive.
Yeah. So how much industrial is it?
Yeah, do you have
in
any more?
The portfolio?
It's not enough.
Yeah.
The industrial I do, so I don't do the Amazon kind of industrial, a big grocery anchored industrial. So my industrial stuff is all, like you said earlier, it's all small bay.
Yeah.
It's all sub 10,000 square foot units in line with, a 50,000 square foot warehouse, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 square foot bays. And that stuff is as good as gold. Easy turns. I mean, I could have someone moving out and I could have someone moving in the same day. So there's tremendous demand for that. But at this point, the exact number I probably wouldn't know, but I'd probably say right around 20% of the portfolio is still that kind of product.
That's awesome.
Okay.
And you're a broker too, right?
Yes, I am.
That's cool. So what do you spend most of your day looking for deals, or do you do brokerage, or do you kind of like, because we're obviously brokers too, so I'm just curious. Right now a lot of our day is spent looking for deals for the brokerage side, because you got to sell deals to to make a living. But then we do spend a good amount of time looking for deals for ourselves as well. But I'm curious how you kind of go about that.
I'm the opposite side. I don't really broker deals for clients. I broker them for myself. So I'm always searching for deals.
Got it.
I have a brokerage license because we're required, because we do third-party management leasing. So in order to do that for other people, even leasing, you have to be a broker. So we run a brokerage company for that aspect. We do have a lot of brokers in the office that are just doing sales and all commercial sales. But I basically probably spend every single day, I would say at least 3 hours a day, looking for deals, calling people about deals, sitting. I have 2 screens in my office, and I'm just, figuring out who owns what's going on, trying to read the news, trying to get smarter to figure it out. I'll go to dinner a couple of times a week with different brokers. I follow up with brokers. Brokers will call me. I'll talk to them and tell them what I'm looking for, and that's worked tremendously well for me too. So I'm really spending the bulk of my point in life right now, truthfully, just finding deals, putting the deals together and closing them. After that, now, most of it's turned over to my team. I'm very lucky at this stage.
That's awesome. So you spend most of your time kind of hunting for the deals. You might find them, acquire them, and then after you acquire them, you have your management team. And I'm assuming that's probably why you set that up, right? You didn't want to be in the day-to-day, the weeds of managing stuff, so you set up a management team to kind of be in-house. Is that why?
Same thing, and this is something that everybody has to understand. Kind of on accident. I started, it was as a stockbroker, and like everything with the cycle, the dot-com bubble burst, and I was paying a property manager more than I was making. This was 1999, 2000. So I decided, 29 years old, seems like a good year to retire. I'll just manage my properties. So I started managing and leasing my own properties. And then when the market started to get bad, people were asking me for help. I hope the statute of limitations is over, because I was leasing their properties, and they say, how much do you want? I said, give me $500. I was probably entitled to a lot more. But what I didn't know is I was doing it illegally, because it wasn't a broker.
Yeah.
I just assumed, I could rent my property, but I couldn't do theirs. So I had to go get my license. And from then I started getting accounts. And I said, well, this makes good sense now that I knew the real fees. So then I started hiring people and more people and more people. And the rest, as they say, is history.
That's awesome.
Do you think, looking back, that it was a good idea for you to lease yours and other people's properties when you probably had properties that were, close together? We've kind of run into this before, but the part B to that question is we're leasing our own properties as well. Do you recommend that, or do you recommend just focusing solely on finding deals? Then we'll try to buy the deals and then
have a broker lease it for us?
Yeah, have a broker lease it for us. Yeah.
No, you should do it yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. You should do it yourself, and you should do the model like I do, because you guys are very smart. You're lucky if you have a good partnership, because you could kind of take a little load off each other's backs from time to time.
Sure. But
you want to do it yourself. You want to, first off, you don't want to pay those fees. So when you start paying leasing commissions, they get very expensive.
Yeah,
very
it's a real
quick.
cost.
So why do you want to give that away? That's money that you could earn. But you also want to do third party. Why not? If you know the area, and if you have 3 properties on a street, you're the best guy. And it's not dishonest or unethical for you to show properties, because they're going to be not exactly alike. And you're going to have vacancies when they don't. But now you got your sign in all the other properties. See, I have my sign at a lot of properties we don't own, but I'll get a call for that property. We don't have a vacancy there, but I can move them a block away. So the more third-party business you can build, the better.
Yeah. The reason I asked that question,
don't do it in Florida.
The reason I asked that question, because I asked pretty much that question to Graham about a month ago, and he had a very similar answer. I didn't think about the inbound leads thing. We could just put it in that property. It's just down around the corner. It's a little bit different than ours. The deal flow and the leads, and we want to be able to control those leads too. So
yeah.
I think that's a good point of that.
Yeah, I think, the brokerage world or investing or whatever,
yeah.
I like the saying activity breeds activity.
Yeah.
So I have a listing in downtown Durham. It's 10,000 feet. I have a sign up, and it hasn't sold. It's been over a year because the owner wanted a lot. I told him it was not worth as much as we wanted, but he wanted to try it. So we tried it. It's been a year. We just adjusted the price. But anyways, I had 4 or 5 people call me on that building telling me what they were looking for in the area. And I would have had no idea. They were from bigger players.
Right.
First of all, I wouldn't have connected with those bigger players. Second of all, I wouldn't have known what they were looking for. So, whether I was an investor or broker, I could just use that and say, oh, these guys are looking in the market. There's another building over here you can buy. I ended up showing one of the people a lot around the corner because they said they'd be open to building something, and it was right around, they just want to be that area. I was like, well, there's a lot over here for sale. Nothing happened of it, but there's been plenty of opportunities where something has come of it. So I think that's a really good point.
Get your name out there.
Yeah,
By any means necessary, get your name out. You get to put your flag there, and people know who you are, and people will see it, and then they'll see yours, then they'll see the other one, and then your name's everywhere. And that's how you do it. So, you guys are young guys. You want to build your portfolio. If at a later stage down the road, your personal portfolio gets too big, you could always stop doing that or pick selective clients. And we wouldn't take any client at this point, but you have that choice. But in the beginning, you want your name out there.
Yeah. I think that's true. I think you mentioned it earlier. You're answering the phone for brokers. You're calling brokers too, and you're having that dialogue, telling them this is exactly what we want, and then they know what you guys are up to too. I think that's kind of like our plan with making sure everybody in the area knows exactly what we're doing, because we, like you mentioned, own multiple properties in a certain area. It's very specific. It's like 3 or 4 or 5 square miles. Like it's right there as the close flies, a mile or two.
That's right.
And so there's a lot of activity in that one area. We want to continue to focus on that. Kind of shifting gears, talking about people knowing each other and personal brand. I know Graham loves talking about this in YouTube. Is this kind of why you started social media?
So social media is a great story, actually. I'll bring it to the beginning, is that my brother, I always say people are raised by the same people, but they become so different. I was always maybe harder working and more interested in earning a lot of money, and he was much smarter, but more concerned with giving back. And I would always watch my brother as I was going up financially. This guy he was taking a week to build houses with Habitat for Humanity. He would clean the seashore. He runs on the weekends with handicapped children and adults and pushes them. And I did shit. I wrote checks. And at first, it's really good for your ego because people keep calling you for money. But I never felt great about it. And I'd be like, man, I admire this guy. He does this, but I need my weekends to unwind. And as I started to do that, I realized, I love real estate. And people kept on asking me advice. I'll start helping. So I brought some interns in. And from bringing interns in, I said, you know what? I should write a book. And I wrote a book, and like everybody else at every age, you have some insecurities. And I said, I don't want to look like one of these guys pushing a book and trying to make money on TV on a book. So I gave all the proceeds of the book to charity. So I make nothing. So I said, now I can push the book. So I started doing that and started doing podcasts. And these young guys reached out to me from the School of Hard Knocks. These guys are great. There's, 2 brothers, James, Jack, and Josh, 3 J's. And they said, we have a podcast. We'd love to come to your office and film it. And I watched them. I said, okay, I'll do it. And when they came, we did the podcast, we did the video. And this was about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, whatever it was, 2 years. And they said, when they did it, they said, man, your video was the best one we ever had. They said, why are you not making videos? And I said, we have a local guy down here, Grant Cardone, who I know.
Yeah.
I said, I'm not doing what Grant does. I'm not following a camera crew around me. Oh, no. And he said, no. They said, if you do it, you film like 2 days in a row, and that's going to get you like 10 weeks of content, and we'll do it all for you. And he said, we'll do it for free to get started, but let's see if it works. I said, you know what? I remember it was towards the end of the year. I said, there's 4 months left in the year. Let's roll with it for 4 months. If it works, we'll do it. And it took off. And I started getting so many leads. And I don't get paid for social media. I know there's ways to do it, but I started getting so many leads. I started getting so many inbound calls. I started getting so much recognition. And it was flattering to see people want to learn real estate, because I was getting frustrated by so many guys selling all these programs to people that they don't need to buy. And they said, oh, well, why are you doing it? I say, no, I'm not selling anything. There's a book, but I don't get the money for it. Mm-hmm. There's no course. There's no mentorship. There's no nothing. And they said, well, why would someone do that? People don't do it. I said, well, I do it. Ray Dalio does it. Mark Cuban does it. Gary Vee does it. We're not selling anything. But people yet want to go out and spend money on these courses. And I got news for you. Some of these courses are tens of thousands of dollars for a weekend, and it's all available for free. I have a friend, Beth Azar. She actually does have a course. They call her the Canvassing Queen. Mm-hmm. And if you call Beth, she's a very wealthy woman, but she loves to teach as well. And I love that she's a woman doing it. But if you call Beth, she goes, do me a favor, don't buy my course. It's all on YouTube for free. And people still want to buy courses. So more people have to give back and teach the next generation. You don't have to spend money. But what you do have to do is take action. You can get all the education in the world, but until you're willing to put your name on a deed like you gentlemen did, the education's not going to help.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. I'm curious, how did you get connected with Beth Azar? I've heard her a bazillion times because she's obviously massive, like you said.
Beth is terrific. So we're in the same business. So we've met each other from around just different events and stuff like that. I've been on panels with Beth. And, I have 2 daughters, so I'm very motivated to get more women into commercial real estate. I think more women edge over to residential is like, I don't want to call it a cop-out, but it's an easier thing. They don't think they're welcome in the old boys club of commercial, and they are. I'm very involved with Crew Network and places like that. I want them to keep motivating people. So I love Beth's message, and she is really a champion of women, and she really spearheads bringing women into commercial real estate, so I support her tremendously. She's awesome. Wrote a couple of good books, and again, I'm not going to sell her program. It's all available for free.
That's so cool. So what did those guys, so they came out for 4 months, and also the School of Hard Knocks, is that the guy who goes around, who you were on recently? Is that the same guy?
I don't know. So he's on every day. I don't know how often he posts my videos anymore, but so that's James. His thing was, at the time, he was like 21 years old, and he'd walk up and say, excuse me, sir, what do you do for a living? And he was the pioneer in it. Mm-hmm. And when he first started, I think when I met them, they had a few 100,000 followers. Yeah. Now I think across the board, they're like over 10 million. And these kids are blown up. They're 23 years old.
Yeah.
But these guys are flying to Abu Dhabi now, Hong Kong, F1 races. So they've really blown up and they deserve it. So they're doing terrific. So they didn't stay with me for 4 months. They came, we filmed, we ran 2 months. It was doing really great. They came, they filmed for 2 days and we ran it. And by the end of the 4 months, I think I had like 10, 12,000 followers, but the comments were so inspiring. And I said, it's actually working. Let's just let it roll. And now it's been, I think we started in August. We're heading close to 2 years.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I knew that of him, of course, because he's like you said, he's absolutely blown up. He's interviewed massive people and stuff. I didn't realize there was 3 of them though. That's interesting.
Well, it's a team of 3. So they're 3 kids and they're brilliant. And by the way, I mean, one of them won the award at under 18 as the #1 programmer of Excel in the world. And he got a free scholarship to UT. So they're brilliant kids. They're smart kids, but they're aggressive and they're going for it.
Yeah.
And they are investing in real estate and doing stuff. And they're 23 years old. Maybe they're 24 now.
That's wild.
But
that's insane.
They built this. And
what is up, commercial real estate investors? While you're listening to this podcast, serious investors are already booking their flights to Cleveland. They know what's happening August 15th through the 17th at the Key Tower Marriott in downtown Cleveland. Commercial Academy is going to be live. It's going to be back. 3 intensive days with J. Scott Shield, Sean Katona, Jared Elmar, and hundreds of active commercial real estate investors from across the country are writing checks and closing deals at these events. The one in August, if the 15th to the 17th in Cleveland, I'm going to be there. Graham's going to be there. You're going to be witnessing all kinds of alumni breaking down deals, seeing real stuff happening live time. We're going to be in the room with J. Scott Shield as he unveils all his keynote presentations, his classic state of the market intelligence report, the kind of insider perspective that positions you months ahead of market shifts. Right now, your biggest competitors are texting Blueprint to 888-653-1199, and they're getting their seats, their networking opportunities, and their competitive advantage. The question is whether you're going to be at this event or not. Like I said, me and Graham are going to be there. So don't watch from the sidelines. Text Blueprint to 888-653-1199 to lock in the lowest possible rate. And if you register before Friday, June 20th, we'll have an exclusive Commercial Academy gift waiting for you in Cleveland. Remember, it only takes one deal, one time to change your life forever. We'll see you in Cleveland. Attention commercial real estate investors. What if I told you that in 72 hours, you could walk away with the complete blueprint that's creating millionaires in commercial real estate across the country? That's exactly what's happening August 15th to the 17th at Commercial Academy Live in Cleveland, Ohio. This isn't your typical real estate seminar. This is an intensive immersion where Commercial Academy's ambassador, faculty, and alumni have done over $1 billion of assets in their active portfolio. They're going to reveal the proven playbook for identifying distressed assets, structuring win-win deals, and turning problem properties into profit centers. But here's what's going to make this event truly different. You're not just learning from a few people. You're going to be meeting Commercial Academy founder and CEO, J. Scott Shield. And when he takes the stage for his exclusive State of the Market briefing, you'll get the market intelligence that positions you to capitalize on opportunities before they come obvious to everyone else. The reality is simple. Commercial real estate investors across the country are registering, and they understand while others are still thinking about it, they're going to be actually taking action. We talk about that all the time on the podcast. So don't get left behind. Text Blueprint to 888-653-1199 today and secure your seat. Register before Friday, June 20th, and you'll receive an exclusive Commercial Academy gift when you arrive in Cleveland, but only if you act now. The deal that changes your financial future might be one conversation away. Make sure you're in the room where it happens. Again, text Blueprint to 888-653-1199 because it only takes one deal, one time to change your life forever. We'll see you in Cleveland.
There's 2 brothers. So James and Jack are brothers, and Josh is their best friend. So I always call them 3 J's. But yeah,
Okay.
That's cool. So are they still doing your social media stuff now?
Yes, they are.
That's cool. So was that ever their plan to be like a social media, I don't know what the word is for it, like manager, I guess? Or was that just kind of just to help you out, kind of experiment with it and then continue on just because they did that for you?
I don't think they were trying to help me out. I think they were young guys trying to help themselves out. And like how most people stumble into business, they would have done a lot of things to make money back then. This was 2 years ago, and they've blown up since. sense. So they do mine and like 2 other people, and that's kind of it, because now they have a lot of stuff, but they're loyal to the brand and they like my message. I go in their school and mentor sometime, but they like my message because I'm not using their platform or I'm not using their skills to go out and sell a course. And there's a couple other guys, like this guy Ani, who's terrific, and he's in Dallas. He actually is in Austin, something like that, but in Texas, and he has all these Glow franchise tanning bars. So I know they do it for Ani, and he has the same message. He has no course for sale.
Yeah.
You can't pay for his time. So they like that people are trying to help the young generation. So as long as I'm not trying to sell, I think I would stick with them.
That's awesome.
Well, it sounds like they were trying to add value to you, and by doing that, they were kind of, learning how to do the social media. They're getting more reps in, and then they were able to, help themselves out from there too, but by adding value to you, which I think is important too.
Yeah. When they started with you, did you just start the Instagram, or I've seen you on Instagram mostly. So are you on multiple different platforms, I assume? Or
here, I'm going to show my age again. They said, "You're going to go on TikTok?" I said, "No, I'm not." I said, "That's just ridiculous."
Yeah.
And they said, "Trust us. You got to go on TikTok because that's where everybody's at watching these videos." They said, "Well, I'm not doing it anyway. They post it and they do it all for me." So I said, "Fine." So I know they post them on YouTube, TikTok, and places like that. So it's the same video I post that goes on Instagram or TikTok, but I wasn't even paying attention. And, now I have 90-something thousand followers on TikTok, and I don't really use it for that. But I will be honest, lately I've been going more to TikTok because I've been finding it more interesting than Instagram. But I've been answering more of the questions on the Instagram side. But TikTok's fantastic.
that's awesome. So did you start from zero, though? I guess is the question I was going to ask.
Started from zero.
That's wild. That's so cool. Yeah, I saw like I said, the guy sent me your page and I saw you had a big following. I was like, and I was watching your content. I was like, oh man, this guy's got amazing content. You just tell you're genuine. Like you said, you're not trying to sell anything. You're just genuinely talking about something you love. And passion really comes through on content stuff. You can't fake
Thank
that
you.
stuff.
I appreciate that.
You can't fake that. So that's awesome. Do you have any advice for people who want to start kind of like a personal brand for that? Like you said, the deal flow, not necessarily, we're not after recognition. We could care less.
Yeah.
We just, I'm passionate about real estate. So I love talking about it. I'm super passionate about building our portfolio. But like you said, there's just tremendous deal flow and stuff that can come from these personal brands. So I'm curious, do you have any advice for somebody who wants to start one?
I'm going to start you with the first line. There's nothing wrong with wanting recognition. If you work hard and you're proud of your brand and you look at guys that you want to emulate now, like in South Florida, we have the George Perez from Related. There's names that can go round and round with guys that are recognizable. You've earned that right. And if you're out there breaking your ass to build a name and build a legacy for your brand, because eventually nobody is going to care. But if you're doing that, there's nothing wrong with wanting that. But it's more important to give back. The first key to posting and doing things is what I was always taught from these guys is consistency. You can't do it on Monday, the following Thursday, then take 3 weeks up. Nobody's going to follow that. So for people to follow you, you got to be consistent. So if you're going to do it 4 times a week, and it should be every day. I mean, if you follow Gary Vee, he'll tell you it should be 3 times a day. But the more you post, the more it's going to catch. I never know what video is going to catch. Sometimes I say, that is awesome. And no. And I'm like, well, that was stupid. And then got 1 million views. I'm like, you just don't know why.
The best video I ever did, I accidentally didn't put any audio on it. And it went more than everything else. I was like, what? It was an accident.
Nobody wants to hear me?
It was an accident. Yeah. It was literally just, I don't know what it was, honestly.
Something about triple net going out, right?
It was the bad signs of triple net or something like that. The problems with triple net.
Yeah.
And it went, I guess, I don't know why, but it's probably just that topic alone.
So do you post?
But you need to do it.
Yeah, you need to.
You need to. And I tell the interns, I tell my friends, we have thousands of tenants, and I make them do it too. And I said, it's not about that. A lot of people say, oh, I don't want my friends to make fun of me. I don't want to look like, when I did it, I remember someone said, what are you trying to be, a life coach? And I said, well, what exactly are you trying to be, a fitness model? Well, what is your platform? So I'm trying to help people. There's nothing wrong with that. But you got to put yourself out there. And just be authentic. So if you get out there and you make a video and you say something like stupid or you get tongue-tied, it's okay. You're human. You're not supposed to be, a famous actor who gets it right. It's not supposed to take 20 takes. But the more you put your name out there, the more likelihood it is. And that doesn't have to be for real estate. You could be, a doctor. You could be a lawyer. You could be anything. The more you put your name out there, the more it's going to get out there. And believe me, people will know. I go to a lot of places and people sit there now and say, oh, I know your stuff, or my kid knows it. I was just telling the story that a really good friend of mine, one of my best friends from high school, you're going back again to the 1990s, I haven't seen him in years. He sent me a thing, because I have the same phone number. He sent me a picture of one of my videos. He goes, this is great. I share this with my son. I hope you're doing great. He wants to be a lawyer. I want him to come work with you. And I'm like, you know what? Send him to my office. And now I'm going to see my friend on Friday night. I haven't seen this guy in 20 years. So you never know where your message is getting out to. But if you don't do it, I can guarantee you nothing's going to happen.
That's true.
100%.
Press post, because you never know when it's going to come back to you.
That's right.
We have to remind ourselves that all all the time. It's like, I don't know if I want to post this.
Post it.
It's like, yeah.
Post it.
So do you post every day, like you were saying, or like 4 times a week, or?
I luckily have people who do it for me
Yeah.
because I realize I'm a little bit busier now.
Yeah,
but
of course.
yes, every single day, 7 days a week, there's one post going out. And sometimes I'll make like stories or something like that and do it. Or if I have something, I may just upload something and send it off. Like today we had in our office, LoopNet came in. So we'll make a quick video of that just to put it out there to thank LoopNet for coming today. But yeah, just press post. Just the more you're out there, the better.
That's cool.
And like we say names like that, whether you know these people or like them or not, like the names on social media, they have become more famous than actors. That's the truth. I don't know a lot of these influencers in their 20s, but they come to town in Miami. You think like rock royalty came and like, who the hell is that?
Yeah.
But the ones who know. And they're making a lot of money with this stuff too, a lot of them.
Yeah, 100%. I'm curious. You did a video the other day about Airbnb. A lot of people wanting to get that financial independence number and, their first cash flow and stuff are drawn to Airbnb. We tried that. We bought a duplex together, put it on Airbnb, and it did well and it's done well. But right now, since we shifted to commercial, we're like, man, we want to get rid of this thing. So we're trying to lease it long term right now. But I'm curious. I know a lot of people listening who want to get started are interested in Airbnb. So tell me that take again on Airbnb and what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, I hit some nerves with this one, I noticed.
Yeah, I bet you did.
My number one job in teaching and in my business for sure is mitigate the risk. Don't be wrong. The problem I have with Airbnb, and I was discussing this today as a matter of fact, is that first off, it's new, which means people don't really like it or understand it. And it also means it's highly illegal in most cities.
Yeah.
A lot have shut it down. A lot have turned a blind eye because they're not really able to deal with it at this point in time. But you have countries like Spain who just shut it down last week. Shut it down. City of Miami Beach, you Airbnb your place, they're going to come take your home with the amount of fines they're going to give you. They're going to pulverize you. So if you want to invest in Airbnb, you now believe that you're out earning me so you could pay more money for the property. Because if I'm going to rent it to Bob to live there with his family, maybe the house is worth $4,000, but you're going to tell me you're making $14,000. That's when you rent it. Now you got to advertise it. Now you got to be the host when the person gets there. Now you got to run their money. You got to hope that the payments come through. Generally, when they leave, a lot of these people do destroy the places. You got to fix things, break things, go through security deposits. You have headaches. I know people who do this. I've watched someone personally do this, and I said, you are a concierge. They call for restaurant reservations. They call for, how they get a rent-a-car. So now you become a hotel. They get in trouble at night. They go to a club. They get arrested. They're calling you because you're their source in town. So there's a lot more to it than that. And you still have the fact that, one, hotels don't want it. And brands like Marriott and Hyatt, these are multi-billion-dollar brands. They're still fighting it. So I don't think Airbnb is going anywhere, but they got that in their head. And in addition to that, if you live in a nice area, I have a friend who lives in a house. It's probably worth about $1 million. And the house right next door to his is an Airbnb for about the same price. And you know what? He didn't want to raise his family next to strangers every single weekend. And he says some weekends there's nobody there. Some weekends there's 9 cars. And then they park in his lot because they have no respect for it because they're only there for the weekend.
Right.
So it's not that I'm anti-Airbnb. I'm anti the belief that this is a better return. It's not the same. You've now become an investor and you've also become a hotel operator. And by the way, if your business doesn't model out and this particular city or wherever you own it says it can no longer be Airbnb, and if you do it, it's actually a felony and you're going to get hit with $10,000 a day in fines like what they did in Miami Beach, what is your property worth? So don't get greedy. Make sure the deal works for what it's legally conforming to. And that's the way I would work it.
And in the long term too, I think it just happened in Dallas, and I have to imagine there's some people that are like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We paid way too much for this property because we can only lease it, long term for this rate. And something that people don't think about is the back end of the Airbnb. Like you said, it's a business. You got to pay for all the pricing, the cleaning. The cleaning alone is like, I don't remember how much it was last year, but I think it was like closer to $20,000. And we had so many cleanings and stuff. Yeah. It was just so much money. It's a big chunk.
Yeah. The people I see who are doing very well on Airbnb always say, like, if you're going to invest in it, go somewhere that's already like heavily regulated in it so that you're not going to get shut down or like it's more so dependent on like tourism. But the other thing too that's so big, and I've told the story on the podcast a bunch of times, but we bought that duplex for $280,000. We can rent it for gross about each side maybe $3,000, best case. Gross. That's
good.
Net, and that's maybe like $1,500, right? Yeah. So that's pretty good on a residential duplex. Yeah. But we bought it for $285,000. It was probably worth $300,000 when we bought it. Now it's worth maybe $350,000, and that was like 3 years ago, 4 years ago. So like, $50,000 is awesome. That's great. We're very thankful that it appreciated, and we were able to get it at a good price. So we're partners on that. So split it $25,000 each. That's awesome. Is $25,000 going to change either one of our lives though? Probably not. We bought a warehouse for $250,000. It was completely empty. We leased it for $3,000 a month. And so now that's, it has income. Commercial real estate's valued on the income. If you throw a cap rate on it, this market's probably like 8.5%. At 8.5%, it's worth $425. So right there, we made $175,000 in equity just by signing a piece of paper.
That's right.
And that's why, like you know this, obviously, I'm preaching to the choir, but that's why commercial real estate's so awesome. You can do a deal and you can create that much equity in one deal. And in this case, it was a $250,000 deal.
In 4 months.
And we did it. Yeah, it took us 4 months to do it. It's just insane. It's insane. So we're obviously hooked too.
That's how it happens.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Yeah, that's so cool. Go ahead.
Same thing. I was talking to a guy yesterday about deals and him putting a bunch of deals together, and he said, rarely ever do I put my own money out of my pocket into a deal, because he's able to leverage relationships that he has with the banks and equity that he already has. I'm curious if you've ever done that and seen it done, and if you even use it to add more properties to your portfolio.
And this guy too is also, just to give a little backstory, it's like he's not just anybody. He's nobody knows who he is, but he has like a massive portfolio. He's flying around and stuff. He's very low key. I'm sure you've met a lot of those people. Nobody knows who they are, and they're like,
what the really rich guys are. It's not the guys on Instagram with the Lambo. It's that guy.
Exactly. So yeah, that's a little backstory.
So you could do that, and he's not putting no money down. He's putting his name on the line, and he's putting equity from other properties, his reputation. So he really is. So if I take one property that has $2 million worth of equity in it, and I say to the bank, I'll let you encumber this equity as $1 million down payment, we cross collateralize it. I'm not putting money down, but I'm reaching into my assets. I'm tying it up. So now I can't sell either one without selling the other, or I have to get the bank's permission. So there are ways to do that. You could, like I said, you could get creative a million ways. Once you get to the level like what you're saying, this gentleman's extremely wealthy, it's just a different world. The world is, it's very hard in the beginning. And even with Airbnb, I'd say the best way to do Airbnb is do Airbnb arbitrage. Rent somebody else's. Let them take the risk. But when you get rich like this guy, everybody wants to give you money. That's just the truth. And it just gets so easy for these guys that they have so many assets that they don't have to put up money anymore. But in the beginning, you're going to have to sign every personal guarantee. You're going to have to probably get advances on your credit card. You're going to have to probably ask your mom, your uncle, your brother. You got to do it all. But if he didn't start wealthy, he had to start that way too. It doesn't start off where you just have that kind of access.
Yeah. I think that's a good point, because that's literally the position we're in. And as you said, that you kept the first two properties that you bought and still own them today. We're kind of in that boat where we're kind of building a portfolio in a nice area that we could position ourselves to sell. But like Graham said earlier this morning, we're like, I don't really know if I want to sell it. Like, I like these buildings and we want to keep them. So, some people tell us to sell in the beginning. Some people tell us to hold. What's your typical advice in that?
I know the answer to this, I think.
You don't sell. You use discipline, and it is discipline. And by the way, even if you have $100,000, $200,000 equity, that's not what it's going to be when you sell it, because there are costs to sell and taxes to sell. And then what are you going to go do? Buy another property? I say keep working those properties, get them better. And if you need to, refinance that property, pull your capital out or as much of it as you can, and go buy another. Because the trick to real estate is allowing it to compound. If the money keeps compounding and you keep paying these things off, and it goes from, well, it nets $1,500, now it nets $1,700, now it nets $2,000. The property that I bought that was throwing off $5,000 a month, it probably throws off over $30,000 a month now. And I could sell it, but why? What's the point? I don't need the capital to go buy another one. And by the way, I probably owe over $800,000 on it, and I bought it for $575. So I've refinanced it. I refinanced it probably 4 or 5 times over 27 years. So I could take money out and go buy something else. If I was to sell that property now, the recapture taxes from all the depreciation on the property would be a fortune. The capital gains would be high. And then I got to take whatever's left, assuming I can't do a 1031, and I got to go find another property. I like the one I have. And if you look at the history of the most successful real estate investors, not flippers, investors, they don't sell. They're patient. And you know what? You guys are young enough to know if you hang on to these gains and don't bite the bullet and say, I'm going to sell, and press that button, in 10, 15 years, you're going to say, oh my God, it doesn't have $100,000 equity. That one has 1.6 million. This one has 390,000 instead of 20. And like, you go, geez, I'm a multi-millionaire. And all you did was buy a couple of properties and set them and forget them.
Yeah. That's kind of, it's, and plus too, like you said, the cash flow. If it's cash flowing already, we've talked to a bunch of different people. We've done over 50 episodes now. We a lot of times will ask this question, and a lot of them say, in the beginning, you need to sell it, take that 100 and whatever, 70,000 equity, and put in the next one and make a bigger deal. But then there's also a lot of people who have said, one guy in particular, he said, I sold it and I made like over $1 million selling the building, but $1 million in the bank is a completely different feeling than the 20,000 I had coming in every month. 20,000 I had coming every month is like I think he said it was evergreen, but the $1 million is like it's gonna get drained, and it's like makes me anxious. I'm like, what am I gonna do with the building? I'm like, that's true. That's very true.
You guys are both very young. You don't sell. Go earn more money. Go broker deals. Go do some third party leasing, and don't touch your real estate money, and let the real estate do its job. It'll do it all by itself. You go find a way to get the money elsewhere if you have to refinance, but the wherewithal, the hard part is holding on.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could sell, but the one part people always leave out of that equation is because I have friends that think you should do that exact model, always sell, even when you have big properties. Well, what happens when you buy one and you're wrong? Now you went from having 7 right, you made all this money and you bought one and now you're wrong. Now what? You lost everything. But if they're good and you're diversifying, I would rather have 10 little ones that I know are right versus taking the shot to get one big one and maybe be wrong. Maybe you're right, but maybe you're wrong. So I'll build it slow and steady.
Yeah. That's going back to what you're talking about, mitigating risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Warren Buffett said it. Rule number 1, don't lose any money. Rule number 2, see rule number 1.
Yeah.
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 I'm curious, you're obviously extremely passionate about real estate. So you're a deal junkie. We are too, for sure. What do you like to do outside of real estate?
Oh, I like to do a lot of stuff. As I've gotten older, I love traveling. I didn't travel much as a kid. I was from New York, so a vacation for us was to the Jersey Shore, which I loved. It was a fun thing, but we didn't really go anywhere. Then we moved to Florida. I really didn't travel. So now I love to go to Europe. I do work out a lot. I've done a lot of triathlons. I do a lot of marathons. Work out every day. I love to go out. I'm very social. Now, my new thing is these guys in the office got me into paddle. So we're in paddle and we have fun with that.
That's a big European thing, right? Or
I think it came from Spain.
Spain, yeah.
But here they set it up and they make these places so beautiful and so much fun. You go there, they give you espresso, you hang out. It's just fun.
It's like a social thing.
And
Plus
it's fun
sport.
because I could play with these guys in my office. I got a lot of young guys there, so they want to hang out and we go and we play paddle, we play golf, and we just have a good time.
That's cool.
But I keep very, very busy. I do sleep now more. I think when you're in your 20s, I tell my interns in your teenage years, 20s and 30s, it's okay to do 5-6 hours a night. It's okay. And you don't need Adderall to do it. Just be tired. It's okay. Drink a Red Bull. But as you get older, sleep becomes more important. So I always try and get at least 7 hours of sleep a night. But I work out in the mornings, I work out in the afternoons, and I keep busy.
That's cool. Oh, what's the difference? I'm curious. I don't know this. What's the difference between paddle and pickleball? Like, is there a big difference between the two?
I've never played pickleball, but I know the pickleball, I think, is like a plastic ball. Paddle is a tennis ball.
Oh, okay.
But I play paddle because, truthfully, there's Paddle Reserve, which is a friend of mine started it, Wayne, and it is so beautiful. It's like I don't even have to play paddle. I can just go there and hang out. It's like a luxury country club. So he makes it so inviting to be there. So it's just fun. But I've never played pickle.
That's cool.
Well, something I learned recently on a podcast was that racket sports is the number one most healthy sport because you're moving. You're typically a lot of people hit the ball as hard as they can, but a lot of like forward and back moves,
Lateral movement.
lateral movements. That's what I was thinking of. And then that community piece that you were talking about. So I thought
Plus,
that
a lot
was
of times you're
interesting.
outside too.
Yeah.
And you're outside.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can tack on there.
Yeah. What made you guys land in Hollywood specifically? So we don't know too much about the area, but
My family didn't land. We landed in Miami when we got here. We moved to an area which is now the city of Aventura back then, and we were lucky. We moved to it. It was called Turnberry Isle, and this was built in the 1980s by Don Sofer, and he did an extraordinary job. And it was paradise to be a young kid because we didn't have the Instagram showing us everybody had fancy stuff. The only TV show we had was Lifestyles Rich and Famous with Robin Leach. But in Turnberry, you had them all living there. They would film the show there. So I had a lot of motivation and inspiration from a lot of really great people that I met that was CEOs of big companies and business owners and big brands. So we started there. And, that's one of my regrets in life is I kind of stayed there. I never moved anywhere else. I moved like I was 14, 15 years old, whatever I was. Only place I went to was Tampa for school. I think it's great to go see other places. Why I tell even my kids, go do a semester abroad, go see the world. I didn't know that. So my whole life, I look off my balcony now, I'm like, you realize my entire life since I've been about 14 years old is in this little tiny triangle. So I stayed there. My office is in Hollywood, which is about 2 miles away from here, because that's where I started buying properties. But it's only 10 minutes from my house.
Okay.
that's cool. What made you choose the name for your company? Is there a meaning behind it, or?
Absolutely. The meaning is that I have the same belief as I did with real estate. I decided to start a company, and the first one I started was TN Property Management. And then I was reading a book, and it said, the company can't be all about you. You have to pick have a name that invites everybody. And I was like, I remember I was up by the beach, and I was like, I love the water. The water's current. What could it be? Current. I said, I love business. Make it sound like a hedge fund, a private equity. So Current Capital. And then I went on logos.com, and I typed in I like water, I like currents, and and it gave me this logo, which looked kind of like a surfboard, which we've changed it since. And I just set it up. It wasn't that complicated. Not a lot of thought went into it. The whole process of picking a name was maybe a whole 4 minutes, and it just didn't matter. And stuck. Now I wouldn't change the name because we're very well known, but the name isn't important. It's what you do is important. It shouldn't be, your brand shouldn't be your name unless you're, I hate to say it, like maybe an egomaniac, but
Yeah.
if you really want to build a team, they have to feel like they work for a company that they're part of. So that's why we chose the name.
Yeah. That's cool. Current capital is really cool. I like that a lot. I love the water too. I'm curious, are you a boat guy being here? Because I know a lot of people have boats and stuff and love being on the water. And
I love boats. I love to go out on boats. I don't think I'm ever going to buy another boat. They're a pain in the ass. And I'm not mechanically inclined. I'm the guy, if my car breaks down or something happens, I'm just going to leave it. I don't really want to see it again. So boats break down, so I don't like that. But, we're lucky down here in South Florida. I guess a lot of places now, they have these boat charter services. So I love going out on the boat and just jumping in the sea and in the middle of Nowheresville and floating around. I think it's great.
that's awesome.
Yeah, we're potentially going to do some of that tomorrow.
Yeah, maybe rent something and get on the water just because I love being on the water. I'm curious. I wanted to ask you this because, brand is important. We talk about personal brand and stuff. Current capital, people hear that in this area. I'm sure they think, that's trustworthy and we know this guy's going to do what he says he's going to do. You are always wearing a suit. Is that part of that's part of your brand, I assume, right?
I love to wear a suit. I love to wear a suit and tie. The summer's coming, so the ties are probably going to fade away. Then the jackets will fade away and come back again in the fall. But, image is everything. And I know we like to say, oh, don't judge a book by your cover, but we do.
Yeah.
So you are judged on how you look and you are judged on how you act and your reputation. So I enjoy it. And believe it or not, it's more comfortable for me to wear a suit, especially without the jacket, than wear jeans in South Florida from outside because it's hot.
Yeah.
I have a very expensive dry cleaning bill because of this, but it's more comfortable for me. But as I tell the people in my office, you never know who's going to walk in. So if you walk in and they judge you because they don't like how you're dressed, that sticks. But no one's ever going to say you look bad in a suit. So take the edge, wear the suit.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's awesome.
I saw a clip of yours that was talking about, you don't wear a watch anymore because you're older and you don't necessarily need that as your brand. But what sticks out is a young guy showing up in a Lamborghini. You're like, how did that young kid get that? Did you rent it? Did you buy it? What's the story? So I'm a car guy. I'm probably going to buy a Porsche this year. An old school Porsche is much cheaper. You could buy one used for under $25,000. But is that something that you would recommend if it's somebody's passion, just to stand out a little bit?
Absolutely. You got to buy it for the right reasons.
Right.
And part of the reason I wear a watch is because I do have a lot of watches, but that could go too far. And I go to a lot of properties. Mm-hmm. So, do you wear a $100,000 watch and show up to your tenant who pays you $2,000 a month and look like an imbecile? Or maybe you're in a bad neighborhood. Yeah. It's also, truthfully, it's a little uncomfortable sometimes with your shirt. It's always getting snagged. Mm-hmm. And also a lot of these watches are pretty heavy nowadays. So I do wear it when I go out at night sometimes, but for the daytime, not so much. However, image does count. Mm-hmm. So I'm smart enough to know that if I pull up here or to a meeting in an old Honda, they're going to judge you. But if you pull up in a nice car at any stage, it does make a difference. So there's a time to pull out the nice cars and a time to not. But you also have to live your life. So if you tell me I'm a car guy and I love cars, so I'm going to buy a Porsche, you should definitely do that because you're buying it for you because you want it.
Right.
Don't buy a Porsche to impress me because I'm not impressed.
That's exactly what I told him. I was like, dude, just buy it. You love this stuff.
Yeah. And you know what? If you get started, you could always sell it.
Yeah.
You could always sell it. But you know what? You're getting one time in this lifetime. This is it. It's not a dress rehearsal. So if you love it, do it. Mm-hmm. But don't do it to impress a girl on Brickell in Miami because they ain't impressed.
No. Definitely not down here. Yeah. They see one of those every other corner.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a whole different world down here.
Yeah.
But I can relate to that for sure. I have 3 kids. And my wife was driving. When we had our 2 kids, I had an old RAV4. It was 2009 old RAV4. And that was her car. And then we bought our minivan and I took that over. And I was pulling up and, I had cracked window and it was pretty old. And I felt that pulling with profits. I don't care what people think about how I look, but I do know that pulling up to a multi-million-dollar building in a old kind of busted car doesn't look the greatest. So I think that it's like you said, it's not necessarily to impress people, but your image does matter.
It does.
And it kind of reflects on your personal brand too.
It does. Right. And there's a lot of things people could do without spending a lot of money, and appearance is a big bulk of it, and the way you carry yourself is a big bulk of it. Yeah. But it is true. I mean, we judge people differently, and you're not going to change the rules of the game. That's just how it's going to be. You will be judging other people. You will talk shit about other people, and they're going to do it about you. So get ready for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially if you do anything.
Yeah.
Because like you said, so many people in life, the majority of the people don't do anything. And I'm not saying to be mean. It's just most people are okay with, they go to a job, they come home, they watch TV, they eat popcorn, and they hang out. And they don't have any ambitions and stuff. They think it's just out of reach. But, the people who are actually out there doing stuff, those are the people people on the couch are making fun of those people.
Yeah.
And it's just, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
I'm curious, if you had to tell yourself, just starting out, I think you said you were in your 20s, if you could go back and tell yourself that, brand new, didn't buy any real estate, knowing everything you know now, what would be the one piece of advice you'd tell them?
Don't worry so much. Everybody's so worried about cycles and the market and interest rates. You're all in it together. When you get to the problem, you'll figure it out. This young generation has a new thing, which we didn't have when I was a kid, anxiety. That's just worrying about shit that didn't happen. There's enough stuff to actually really worry about. Don't worry about what didn't happen. Just wake up every day, keep moving forward, and don't worry. It's all going to work out. A very good example for anyone listening to this podcast would be is when COVID hit, everyone thought the world was coming to an end. We were never going to see people again. And instead, we wound up in one of the greatest economic cycles in history. Real estate specifically went through the roof, AI technology, all these things. And now we always forget that we were on lockdown 5 years ago. The world changes quickly, but when you get there, you deal with the problem. Florida was on lockdown for about 4.5 minutes, but most places were on lockdown a few months. And within a few months, people were back at it. And now you rarely see people with masks. I mean, you get back to it. But you can't forecast and predict what's going to go wrong because nobody had COVID in their model. Nobody. So therefore, when shit happens, you worry about it then. But until then, don't worry so much.
Yeah. That's a great point.
That's phenomenal advice. When I was, it was COVID, I was graduating from college and I wanted to start a construction glove, and I still have that company to the day. And I was cold calling manufacturers to do this, and they're like, "You're crazy, man. Like, you can't start a company right now."
Yeah.
I'm like, "What do you mean?" And I just hung up the phone and I just went to the next person. Like, I just didn't worry about what everybody else wanted because I knew what I wanted to accomplish. And I think you got to have a lot of tenacity these days and not care, know your audience, yes, but at the same time, like you've been saying before, like you can't just worry about what everybody else thinks about you, otherwise you're never going to do anything.
You got to decide what it is you want. It's okay if it changes. It's okay if you don't know exactly what you want, but whatever it is you're going to do, you got to just put your head down and do it because people are always going to tell you no. That's the truth. I mean, and it's not that they're trying to be jealous or envious or don't want to, they're worried for you. Like this, hey, you're going to take your last 50 grand and buy a property. Are you crazy? They're worried for you. But if you want to do it, you got to shoot your shot and you got to go for it. Because you know what? I'd rather lose my money trying than leaving it in the bank and have it there and never doing anything.
Yeah. Be filled with regret.
Yeah.
Think, what if I had tried that?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great point.
So for the entrepreneurs out there, you have a big team and everything now, but when you first started out, what was that first hire? What was the first thing that you did to really set up your team so that you didn't have to worry about all the little bitty 10-level tasks?
Well, you still have those tasks in the back of your head because ultimately I always say your name is on the door, so you have to be responsible. But, the first hire I had was the same thing as I said. I didn't even know how to hire people. So I called a temp agency, and the guy who came out to get the information called me later that night, and he said, I'd like the job. Okay. So he's like, I'm going to quit the temp agency. And I hired him, and then a couple of months later, we were growing, and then we said, we need to get someone to answer the phones because we could get that pretty inexpensive, and I'll have more time to help you, which means you can go out. I said, okay. So we hired someone to answer the phone, and from there, then we needed one person to help us. That's when we got QuickBooks, and brought in a QuickBooks, an accounting person, and you just start growing one at a time. But I will tell you, many business owners are very fearful to hire people. You will not grow your business on your own past a certain level. And if you try and do every task and not allow people to do their jobs, you're really not going to grow beyond maybe $1 million a year in scale. So you have to trust people. You have to grow. But I've never regretted hiring people because it's always grew my business.
Yeah. There's 2 books that I read and Jess read too. He's in the middle of one now, but Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell talks a lot about that. And then Who Not How. Yeah, which is exactly what you're talking about. So you definitely be on the camp of recommending people to start scaling and hiring people.
Hire them. A lot of people want to say, well, when I get to this point, I'm just start hiring people. And hire people to do all the tasks for you that you don't want to do, even if you know how to do it and it's easy. So if you don't like to get your dry cleaning, hire someone. If you don't want to go get groceries, now a lot of stuff is easy because it's automated, but hire people to do little tasks so you can spend your time doing not just what you love, but what's the highest generator of money. Yeah. So like Dan Martell teaches, I know it's his big platform. It's like, well, how much does a task cost me? So if I'm worth $500 an hour, $500 an hour is not worth me to cut my own grass. I could pay $20. So he spreads the risk out that way. But you got to be committed to hire, and you will be scared. But the same thing as we said about your Porsche. You could always lay the person off. That's what the big companies do if things get bad. But you won't have to, because if you hire good people, they'll help you grow your business. You got to be fair to them. If the business is growing, keep paying them more money and keep letting them grow and keep giving them opportunities. But they'll grow your whole business for you.
Yeah. And you brought up a really great point that I haven't really heard Who Not How or Buy Back Your Time really mention, is that your name's still at the door at the end of the day, so you're responsible. Well, it might not be your fault, it's still your responsibility. Yeah. And that's a tough hat to wear sometimes as a business owner.
Yeah. Plus, you alluded to earlier, you said, you said mostly what I do nowadays is I look at deals. and you said you got your 2 screens, and you love looking at deals. You love calling brokers, going taking them out to dinner stuff. That's like I love that too. If I could pick one thing to do all day, it'd probably be looking for deals. I love that side of it, like the hunt.
Yep.
It's just so fun. Now, once you get the deal under contract and you have to do all the administrative stuff, getting the earnest money to the attorney and all that stuff, I hate that side of it. But hunting the deals, I love. And it sounds like that's kind of what you've done. You've built a team, and now most of your day-to-day is like spent on the really high leverage stuff, which is finding deals, making content once or twice a month, whatever it is. And then, you're reaching, I don't know, probably hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions in some of your videos and stuff.
The level that I get to is great, but the starting level is more fun. It's scarier. It's more exciting. And I remember the days when I first had my company, and back then we didn't have direct deposit, and paychecks would bring the checks, but I knew I couldn't put it in the bank because there was no money. And most business owners will tell you that story. I had to pay my employees before I'd pay myself. That grind up, like, what's going to happen? How will this work? And then when it starts to work, it kind of gets more to an autopilot. Like, I know how a deal's going to play out. I know how this is going to work. I know I've done it so many times. So the ride up is really fun, and people have to enjoy it. The stage you guys are at right now is so exciting that you're going to have success because you're going to work hard. You're very optimistic people, and you're going to go through it all, and you're going to have good days and bad. And then you're going to wake up at 52 years old like me and say, you know what? That was a lot of fun. And then you start looking for other things, which is why now I so enjoy teaching, and I want to go to schools and teach and not sell programs again, just teaching, because now you give back. And I have 2 kids who came to me, twin brothers. They were in high school. They were 17. Now I found out they just turned 18. They bought their first property on Monday. And I went on their social media, and they tagged me in a video, and they said, I want to thank Todd Napola for spending all this time mentoring us. And I was like it was like I'm in the middle of a $34 million deal, and I could give a shit. I was so happy for these kids. Yeah. And I had a tiny, tiny little bit to do with it, but to them it was a lot. Yeah. And I gave them the confidence, and I work with them. And that's what you want to see. You want to work with people and see them actually do it. Mm-hmm. The truth is, you work with a lot of people, but they won't actually do it. When these kids did it, I think they're superstars. They're actually in my office today, but they're great kids. So you want to give back. You get to a different phase of life.
That's so cool.
I think the key point of that too, and there's some interns in the room that should hear that too, like when you're getting advice from mentors, a lot of times, the mentor gives the advice to the mentee, and they're like, did it work? Did it happen? Like, they followed up with you. They tagged you. I hope they reached out via email or text or something, but they actually followed up. And I think that's huge. Like, you got to follow up, and then that's going to continue the relationship, right? Like, that's not the end of the story. Yeah. You're going to continue to see them grow. That you're going to be able to give them even more advice. They're 18. They got their whole life ahead of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious. This is just switching gears, but it's obviously the next big thing, the next big craze. Are you guys using AI at all in your business?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no 2 ways about it.
It's
one of the greatest tools you could use. It's a game changer. Yeah. And if you're not using it, you're crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. What ways are you guys using it?
We use it for everything from, I can tell you, we use it for writing ads, to hiring people. We use it to abstract of leases. We put our leases into AI and tell it to break it down, find risk points, find abnormal things. We use it for, doing addendums. I use it for even sending emails sometimes to make them look prettier because they put it all together for you. We use it for advertising our properties. What are people looking for? It's just so incredibly useful. And I probably know 1/1,000,000th of 1% of what it could do. It's just so huge that it is the future. And just like people were afraid of, computers back in the day, they were afraid of, the assembly line back in 1900. People are afraid of it now, but it's a tool and it's not going anywhere. So start using it because it's going to make your life a lot easier.
That's so cool. Yeah, we've used it for all kinds of stuff. It's insane. And like you said, I know for a fact we're scratching like a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of what it can do. There's so many things. Somebody says, "Oh, I can do this." I'm like, well, how do you even set that up? Yeah. And then I'll start asking, ChatGPT about how to set up some AI thing, and it's like AI talking about AI. It's funny.
Mm-hmm. What people don't understand is the smartest, the most successful people in the world, they just have a lot of knowledge. Yeah. And this tool gives you a lot of knowledge and makes your life easier. Mm-hmm. I just used it the other day. I was sitting in my car, and this little light kept on coming on. I was like, there must be a way to change it. So you type in there the car and this, and it tells you if you press this button, do that. I was like, and it fixed my car. Yeah. I was like, it does everything.
100%.
Any information you want, you could just ask it to question about so much, and you could gather everything. You go to a restaurant. I'm going to go to dinner tonight on a date, and I need to know about red wines at this restaurant, and it'll tell you everything. And by the way, that restaurant's menu is probably online. Chat Scott will tell you, I recommend you order the such and such for this reason. You can bullshit your way through anything. Like, I think I'm going to order the 1992 too, Merlo. Like, it'll make you better at everything. So that's the game.
Yeah. So one hack that the owner of the company we work at told us about, which we used, we obviously did our research on you, but we used ChatGPT some too. If you say, give us a chief level or chief of staff level briefing on XYZ person, like if you're on the way to employment or something, you can do that and it'll tell you.
Yeah.
And most of the time it's pretty spot on. So that's another thing. I'm curious. I know it mentioned you had kind of a run in TV. How was that? Like, did that affect your personal brand at all, or do you think?
Like my personal life, yes.
Okay.
It was no fault of my own. I was married to a woman who was on The Real Housewives of Miami, and it seemed like a great idea. We weren't married when it came out. She was on it, then it went off the air. And the producers come, and I give them credit. They say this amazing story. I never watched those kinds of shows. So I bought into it hook, line, and sinker. I was like, I'll be great. I'm going to be on TV, and people are going to know me. And then they filmed the show. And when the filming started, I said, this might not be the way I thought it's going to be, because you see the way they set up the fights, and it's staged. And, I mean, I think most people understand that reality TV is not actually real, but many people do think it's the real world.
Yeah.
But then when it comes out and you see the edited version, you go, oh, no, hell no. But not me. I'm not a quitter. I said, the next season, I'm going to work harder and be smarter. And the producers said, yeah, well, screw them even more. And then I said, I'll never do this again. But it has a tremendous toll on your personal life. And unfortunately, the trail of people who have been on reality shows, you'd be hard-pressed to show me a single one that actually has thrived from it. Not make money, but thrived. There's been, the show I'm on, how it was on, the Housewives of Miami. The Housewives franchise is comical because they're all divorced.
Yeah.
You see these young people that went on to these shows, even like I used to watch it. I didn't realize it was a reality show, like, the Jersey Shore. These kids wind up with drug problems. They wind up in prison. I mean, other than one or two of them, they really screwed up their lives. So people want to be famous just for being on a reality show. That's not real fame. That's being very well known. You're not a credible person. You're not Beyonce. You're not George Clooney. You don't really have a skill, and people mock you for that. And it creates a tremendous insecurity, and it creates a lot of fighting internally. So I don't recommend that to anyone.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's kind of like people in Disney Channel and stuff. You hear about crazy child stars and stuff. But yeah, that's interesting. I'm trying to think. Do you have any kind of other questions or things you want to ask?
You kind of stole my thunder with the advice to yourself when you were younger.
Yeah.
I don't think I do.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, it's been a great episode.
It's been awesome. Yeah. I mean, nothing but value.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me. It's been a lot of fun, and thank you for letting some of my interns pile in the room. They've been patiently standing there watching this.
Yeah, I know.
They get to take this experience at, 18, 19, 20 years old, and they get to take this and take it to the next level because they're the future people sitting here.
Yeah.
So now they see it, and it becomes a little bit more real.
Absolutely. Yeah. For people who want to connect with you, what's the best place to do it? Instagram, LinkedIn?
I recommend, I mean, I don't really use LinkedIn that much, truthfully, but I'm on Instagram. So if you want to follow my site, it's Life According to Todd. It is on TikTok too, at Todd Napola. I would just want to put this out there. I'm never going to try and sell you anything. Certainly not Bitcoin. I know there's a lot of clone accounts going out there, but I don't sell anything. If you're in the Hollywood, Florida area, we meet people in the office all the time. If you're in real estate and you want advice, feel free to pick up the phone and give us a call. We'll help you any way we can. And that's what we do.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I like that.
Awesome. Well, you guys heard it here. Go give Todd a follow. We thank you so much for coming on again, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Todd.